How to build a Blackgates Sweet Pea 5-inch gauge locomotive, part 61, showing my method for oiling the coupling rods, temporarily fitting the boiler and smoke box and seeing what the cab would have looked like, removing and dismantling the smoke box. Because the coupling rods, and indeed the connecting rods, have lubrication points at the end, all I have to do is apply a pressure oil can to these areas, and you can see the surplus oil oozing out of the bearing. The chassis is now sat on my rolling road, and this makes it very easy to see how the locomotive balances. And by some sort of a miracle, it's really good. The suspension on the rear driving wheels is slightly stiffer than the front pair. But don't forget, when the boiler's in place, the firebox is quite a big lump of metal, and when it's all full of water, there's going to be considerably more weight over the rear pair of wheels than the front. Even though I haven't repaired the boiler yet, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this will be successful, it's time to place it in position on the chassis. And you can clearly see that the back part of the boiler is a greater diameter than the front and also much heavier. It's also a different colour because it's sat in my acid bath for a day or so to clean it, ready for the silver soldering operation. Here I'm pointing to the area of the boiler which is leaking, but not on the outside, it's on the inside, in the firebox itself. This boiler is not new by any stretch of the imagination. It's been removed from another engine because it leaked. And the hole in the smoke box isn't big enough to take the boiler. I'm just gently tapping it in position just so I can show these next few clips. Here's the firebox area with some blanking plugs sat in the bottom just in case you wonder what they are. I'm rocking the engine about a little bit, and now the balance feels very different because of the weight over the rear pair of drivers. I've looked in the Sweet Pea book, and I think I must be going blind because I cannot find anywhere where it shows how the boiler is fitted to the frames. As you can see in this clip, there are two brass brackets silver soldered to the boiler, and they're in the right place. Here I've inserted a piece of steel bar to lift the boiler so you can see the bracket. Whenever you fit a copper boiler to a steam locomotive or even a steel boiler, it's a good idea to fit an expansion joint, because as the boiler gets hotter, it also becomes longer. I once built a part-finished Midland spinner single-wheeler, and I didn't fit an expansion joint, and when it was in steam, the expansion of the boiler used to push the smoke box forward. So I need to figure out some sort of mechanical contrivance to allow this boiler to expand and contract. I have an idea in my head. I'll show it when the time comes to make it. And that is only if my boiler repairs are successful. I'm being fairly optimistic at the moment. The good news is the boiler sits in the frames at exactly the right height to allow the mounting bracket to be in the perfect place. In the last episode I dismantled the cab. I was telling young James about this because I see things differently. I realise that when you look through the cab window, from a scale point of view it's entirely wrong. The height of the cab is entirely wrong. When you put the tank on, you can't see through the windows. One of my suggestions to James was to elevate the cab with 4 columns, one at each corner, and then put a nice piece of chintz curtaining around the bottom of it. And I think initially, for a very short time, James thought I was being serious. I think this saddle tank is a little bit on the big side, but the good news is it will at least hold a lot of water. I've ordered a proper Sweet Pea cab from Blackgates Engineering, and it should be with me in 2 or 3 weeks. The size of the proper cab will put the water tank into perspective. That's it for the boiler for the moment. I'm moving it out of the way. This boiler is quite a substantially made thing, and it's heavy even without the water inside it. The next thing to remove was the smoke box and saddle unit. I'm not going to mess about with this. The build quality is diabolical. All I'm going to do is dismantle it, repair the problems, put it back together and paint it. Removing the smoke box door was the easy part. I couldn't remove the crossbar, it was impossible. The crossbar itself and the fitting for the crossbar needs some surgery. Surprisingly though, the crossbar is very well made. It's just a pity you can't remove it when it's in place. More about that later, but not in this episode. The only good thing about this Smokebox assembly is that it's well sealed with some sort of sealant where it needs to be sealed. It's really important that the Smokebox is airtight. If it isn't, then the steam blast up the chimney which draws the fire will not draw the fire and the boiler will be inefficient. Even with the fitting removed, the crossbar was reluctant to part company with the Smokebox, but a quick tap with a hammer did the trick. The next job is to remove the Smokebox saddle because this is no good at all. Most of it's made from filler. There's quite a lot of work to do on this Smokebox, and that doesn't really include the chimney mounting, which doesn't fit the radius of the Smokebox. Even though I've slackened off the nuts and bolts that hold the barrel to the saddle and the barrel were still firmly stuck together with the filler. It doesn't matter for now, I will leave it where it is and remove it in the next episode. This part, which holds the chimney in position, is a real problem. Look at the amount of filler around it. And I don't know why the builder's done this, because shaping this part isn't really that difficult. And there are various methods of doing this. I'm going to use a 4-inch belt sander. In the book it shows using a fly cutter. In the past I've used a method that I learnt about by reading the works of LBSC in the Model Engineer many years ago. Just wrap some coarse sandpaper around the Smokebox and rub the chimney fitting on that until it becomes the same radius as the Smokebox. Simple when you think about it. Anyway, that's it for this one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.